Did you know that silence can be more powerful than any word? That's right. After a breakup, when you choose to step away without making an effort to reconnect, something incredible happens. The other person begins to crave your presence. And guess what? This makes them desperately seek your attention in ways you never imagined. Sounds counterintuitive, right? But it's the key to regaining emotional control in the relationship and making your ex-partner start to wonder, did I make the right decision? In today's video, we'll explore the power of silence and how you can use it as a psychological weapon. We'll uncover why ignoring after the breakup can make you seem even more attractive and how silence can destroy their ego, creating regret that drives them to desperately seek your attention. Stay tuned, because what you're about to learn here might just change the way you approach any relationship. Are you ready to master this strategy? Chapter 1. The Silent Weapon. How disappearing after a breakup makes them beg for you. After a breakup, you can use silence in an incredibly powerful way. By stepping back and creating an emotional void, you begin to generate a psychological impact on the other person. Imagine that your partner ended the relationship, and instead of trying to contact them or seek answers, you silently and strategically step away. This silence creates a deep effect. Your ex begins to question their decision. They start to feel like, in some way, they've lost something important, something that is now out of reach. It's not just the end of the relationship that scares them, but the absence of you in their life. And it's at this moment that the desire to reconnect begins to grow. The absence of words and actions tends to provoke a feeling of loss, creating the necessary emotional space for the other person to rethink their decision. When someone disappears like this, the human mind begins to seek answers. The void created makes the person not only miss you, but also realize that something was missing from their life. The mind starts searching for a way to restore that balance, and this creates the need to reconnect, to seek a way to fill that emptiness left by your absence. Silence, in this case, is not just a lack of words, but a tool for reconquest, a path to rekindle the flame of doubt and the search. This power of silence can be compared to a kind of secret weapon that you use without needing to show or prove anything. Contrary to what many might think, absence can be more attractive than any word or impulsive action. Silence has a profound impact, and instead of forcing a solution, you allow the other person to feel the pain of loss and start re-evaluating everything that happened. This is how the emotional void begins to act, creating an irresistible attraction. Now, when the ex feels this emptiness, questions begin to arise that may be difficult to answer. They find themselves thinking, did I make the right decision? Or what happened to me? The human mind doesn't like uncertainty, and it starts looking for answers. Deep down, the absence of contact and lack of communication create an emotional disturbance, where the person can no longer see the situation as clearly. This opens the way for a growing desire for reconstruction, which will eventually lead them to seek reconciliation, albeit in subtle and shy ways. Chapter 2. The Silent Attraction. How ignoring them after a breakup makes you irresistible. Ignoring after a breakup may seem counterintuitive, but it is one of the most effective strategies to make yourself more attractive in the eyes of your ex-partner. When you choose not to chase, not to try to justify or fix things, silence creates a space where the other person begins to ask themselves what is going on. Instead of being predictable and acting as you always have, you choose to step back, which turns your absence into something valuable. The moment you become emotionally inaccessible, the ex starts to see you in a new light, making you even more attractive in their eyes. The psychological effect of silence is impressive. When you ignore someone after a breakup, you become a kind of enigma. The absence of a response, whether in messages or attempts to reach out, makes the ex begin to see you as something distant, mysterious, and, in a way, desirable. The human mind tends to feel attracted to things that are out of reach, and this emotional distance creates a desire for closeness. When the other cannot have you, they feel an even greater need to reclaim your attention, which places you in a position of power. Imagine this. You ended the relationship, and while your ex tries to contact you, you remain silent. This behavior creates a powerful psychological effect, where the other person begins to feel frustrated, but at the same time more attracted to your stance. They start to wonder why you're no longer responding, which leads to greater attraction. This silence goes beyond just not responding to messages. It's an emotional withdrawal that shows you are no longer available for the same old dynamics, which ultimately generates perceived value in your absence. In many cases, the person who ignores after the breakup starts to be seen as someone more valuable. They are no longer chasing, no longer desperate to reconnect, which sends the message that your attention is not something that can be easily attained. The simple act of emotionally withdrawing, of not yielding to reconciliation requests, transforms you from someone vulnerable to someone who has control over their own emotions. This creates a scenario where the other person, realizing they can no longer manipulate the situation, begins to long for your presence and want to reconnect, now, with a deeper level of interest and respect. Chapter 3. The Ego Killer. How silence makes your ex-partner regret leaving you. Silence after a breakup has the power to destroy the other person's ego in a quiet but impactful way. When you don't give in to attempts to contact or seek reconciliation, the ex-partner begins to feel vulnerable. The ego of a person, especially after a breakup, craves affirmation, and when it doesn't receive that validation, they begin to question their own decisions. Not receiving responses or reactions from you creates a sense of emptiness, a profound emotional impact. They start to wonder if they made the right decision. This psychological game of silence creates an internal conflict. Imagine that after the breakup, you choose to step away and not respond to messages or pleas. The person starts to feel like the situation is no longer under their control, and this emotional disturbance creates regret. The ego is usually high after a breakup, but silence weakens that confidence. The lack of a response, the absence of action, causes the ex-partner to start questioning themselves, reflecting on the decision made. They begin to realize they may have lost something valuable, and this regret is directly fueled by your absence. Silence also has the ability to provoke a sense of loss. The ego, when challenged, generates a desire for reconciliation because the human mind does not like to be left with doubts. When the other person sees that you are no longer willing to engage, it creates a feeling of vulnerability. The ex-partner feels like they need to restore that sense of control and power, and often this desire to reclaim what has been lost may cause them to reconsider their own choices. As time goes by, the ex-partner begins to realize that regret is the only remaining reaction, and this pushes them to seek your attention, often more intensely. This game of silence, where you don't yield, creates a dynamic where the person begins to become aware that their decision was hasty, and that there is something of value they left behind. The ego that was once secure begins to fade, and the only solution to restore it is to seek reconciliation. Chapter 4. The Ghost Effect. How disappearing makes them long for you. The concept of ghosting can be seen negatively, but when used strategically after a breakup, it is a powerful psychological tool. By simply stepping away and disappearing from your ex's life, you create an emotional void that is difficult to ignore. The human mind, when confronted with the absence of something familiar, starts to generate a void that needs to be filled. This disappearance is not about being cruel, but about allowing the other person to experience the absence you leave. This makes them begin to long for your presence. When you step away completely and without explanation, it begins to mess with the other person's perception. They have no clear answers, they don't know what happened, and in many cases, this creates a feeling of insecurity and confusion. The human mind hates the unknown and uncertainty. This disappearance, this total absence, begins to be seen as something that needs to be regained. By not giving an explanation, you feed this need to reclaim what was lost. The strategic ghosting, therefore, has the power to make the person miss you much more intensely than if you had simply broken up and continued your life normally. Deep down, everyone has a need for emotional control. When you disappear, suddenly and without warning, you take that feeling of control away from your ex, leaving them in the dark. What begins as an emotional void transforms into an obsession with trying to fill that space with your presence. They start thinking about you constantly, trying to understand what happened, and often this quest for answers ends up generating a strong attraction. The absence becomes the starting point for a growing need for reconciliation. This disappearance effect can also be amplified by the idea that the other person can no longer access you as easily. The absence of a response or attempt to reconnect creates a psychological tension that makes the ex-partner worry about what's happening with you. Silence here is the key for the ex-partner to realize they have lost control over the situation. This creates a desire to take back that connection and feel they once again have the power to influence your life. Chapter 5. The Desperate Pursuit. How silence makes your ex-partner chase you. After a breakup, using silence can transform the power dynamic, making your ex-partner start to seek your attention desperately. This happens because, by stepping away, you remove the feeling of control they have over you. The lack of responses and the absence of actions on your part make the ex begin to ask themselves, why aren't they trying to reconnect? This questioning creates psychological tension, which makes them seek your attention at all costs, desiring to restore the lost contact. The key lies in not chasing after them, not trying to fix things immediately. By emotionally stepping back, you create a profound effect on the other person. They begin to feel as though they are losing control of the situation and, inevitably, begin to seek answers. This seemingly harmless behavior generates an emotional obsession that leads the ex-partner to take the initiative. The search for your attention becomes a mission, a way to restore emotional balance and the feeling that everything is under control again. Moreover, by remaining inaccessible, you also send the message that your attention is not something easy to attain. This makes your ex-partner work harder to win you back. They begin to think about how to apologize, justify themselves, or even show that they can be better. The lack of communication on your part puts them in a position where the effort to reconnect is intensified, creating a desperate need for reconquest. They become more aware of your absence and feel more attracted to the idea of restoring the connection. Deep down, this search for your attention becomes an attempt to restore the emotional validation they once sought from you. When your ex can no longer easily access you, they begin to feel vulnerable and anxious, creating a situation where, by seeking your validation, they begin to recognize the value you had in their life. This effort for attention makes them start to look at you with new eyes, and many times it leads to a genuine desire for reconciliation. Now that you've learned how to use silence as a powerful tool to regain emotional control after a breakup, it's time to put this knowledge into action. Are you ready to make the other person start questioning their decision and craving your attention? Remember, the secret lies in the power of silence. and the absence of your words can be the key to reigniting their desire for reconciliation. So, what will you do now? Will you let the need for answers take control, or will you take charge and use this strategy to your advantage? Be strategic, be bold, and remember, change begins with your actions. And don't forget, if you enjoyed this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. There's so much more to learn about mastering the psychology of relationships.